Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Suddeth, the Associate Dean for Special Collections at the University of South Carolina Libraries. It's my privilege to welcome you to the third reading of the 2020 Fall Literary Festival at Home. The Fall Literary Festival was established in 1999 with the generous gift from Dorothy Brown Smith and continues with support from the Smith Family Foundation. We conclude this year's Fall Literary Festival tonight with novelist and short story writer George Singleton. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ray McManus, Professor of English and Director of the Center for Oral Narrative at USC Sumter. Dr. McManus.
Good evening. It is my honor to introduce tonight's reader, Mr. George Singleton. George would have me say that he lives in Spartanburg and has written some books. That's it. That's all he'd have me to say. But of course, I can't just say that. Not for a writer who has published 9 story collections, not for a writer who has published 2 novels and a book of writing advice, not for a writer who has received a Pushcart Prize, a Guggenheim Fellowship, a Hillsdale Award for Fiction, a Corrington Award for Literary Excellence, not for a writer inducted into the Fellowship of Southern Writers and the South Carolina Academy of Authors, not for a writer whose most recent collection, You Want More, Selected Stories of George Singleton, published by Hub City Press, is a compendium of greatest hits of hilarious dysfunction. Surely a writer who has done all of that deserves more than a one-sentence introduction, even if that writer is George Singleton. We know George. If you've grown up in South Carolina, lived in South Carolina for any number of years, or ever ventured into the upstate or stopped for gas or walked through a flea market, you can see and hear George. In case you don't know this, George Singleton is a Southern author. And with that moniker, you would expect certain stereotypes: the seersucker, the boozer, the hellraiser. And George has consistently gone against one of those stereotypes. And in case you didn't know this, George Singleton is lucky. The man has basically made an entire career just by being here in South Carolina, just by eavesdropping on conversations and looking around. Sure, he was born in Anaheim, but was raised in Greenwood, graduated from Furman University with a degree in philosophy and later an MFA from UNC Greensboro. So he was well on his way to being a writer. But it just so happened he was living in a state that has been begging for someone to write about the people here, daring that writer to just try and capture the back road geography of this place and watch their career go nowhere. And here's George saying, "What the hell, hold my beer." What Lucky George has been able to do is capture what so few have done with this place. Stripped of romanticism steeped in pluff mud or pasture, he has made the mundane, the stupid, the batshit crazy that most of us who've grown up around here would call family into something extraordinary, something funny, at times tragically funny, and in doing so has given us a wonderful gift. Because as readers, we can't help ourselves in thinking these fictional places are real. We can't help ourselves in getting caught up in the misfortunes of a man who recorded Bonanza over his wife's sonogram and tries to score a replacement tape at a bar, or a town absolutely heartbroken for over a century that Sherman thought it was unworthy of a good burning. We fall for the escapades of characters like a Stet Looper or a Mendel Dawes or a Harp Spillman because we recognize them. We know them somehow, somewhere, and how easy it would be to dismiss them after the fact. Except George reminds us that these people are us. And so as we laugh at them, we laugh at ourselves. What a gift. Because if there's ever been a time when we've needed to laugh, it is certainly now. And for those of us who've grown up in this state, that need has been forever. George Singleton, flea market connoisseur, possum whisperer, non-venomous snake charmer, writer of some books. Welcome.
All right, they come on. Thank you, Ray. Let me just put up my seersucker coat now. Let's throw it over here on the chair. Hey, y'all. Thank you for coming out. I, too, want to thank the Dorothy B. Smith Foundation. I think this is a kind and generous act that the family is doing. I just spent an hour with the great class of David Bejo, the great writer David Bejo's class, and we didn't quite have enough time for me to explain how stupid I am. So I'm going to just continue on with that notion here. About a book or so ago, I was kind of trying to come up, because I live in South Carolina, so I just kind of make these little games with myself. And I was thinking, and I try to do link stories. So I was going to write a book of stories that all took place on holidays. There'd be a Christmas one, a Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day. There are a heck of a lot of holidays in the world that I did not know about. Anyway, I was going to do that. So on an occasion like this, I could say, well, happy Halloween, everybody. And it just so happens that I have a Halloween story. And then you would all say, what a genius he is. But, that didn't quite work out. And anyway, I'm going to read a Halloween story that takes probably about 20 to 25 minutes. And it's called Four-Way Stop. This is a third-person story. And normally I write in first person. I'm more comfortable with it, but I try to practice with the third person 4 or 5 times a year. The main character's name is GR, like initials. Four-Way Stop. GR prided himself on both historical and traditional figures. He felt as if he knew quite a bit about pop culture, too, at least movies and music. This was Halloween at his and Tina's front door, far from normal suburban neighborhoods. He'd already pointed at masks and said Batman, Iron Man, Superman, Spider-Man, Incredible Hulk, and Common Zombie. Clown, Ghost, Pocahontas, Ninja, Iraqi War Special Forces SEAL. He'd correctly identified Reagan, Bush, Napoleon, and Rush Limbaugh. Ballerina, pro wrestlers, Andre the Giant, Lex Luger, Ric Flair, The Undertaker, Macho Man Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, Dusty Rhodes, Rey Mysterio Jr. He'd pointed out football players, Cam Newton and Peyton Manning. GR waved at parents waiting at the roadside in their cars, gave a thumbs up, said how much he liked the way their little Lady Gagas looked, their Mileys, their MacBook Airs, and cans of Red Bull. Damn, he said to his wife, how many miniature Snickers we got left? We got any of those Reese's cups? I don't remember Halloween being like this the last few years. The churches must have quit having parties. I thought parents got scared off by razor blades and white powder. Tina sat in the den with the door open to the living room where her husband stood at the front door. She said, I told you to wear a bloody bandage on your head like some kind of Civil War amputee. That might scare some children away. We already spent almost $50. Please don't tell me to go back out. They ain't even from around here. Some of them aren't even kids. She picked up the channel changer and moved from one Food Network program to another. She went from a Tips on Vinegar barbecue show to one on noodle making in Southeast Asia. Tina wore flannel pajama bottoms with giraffes printed on them and a t-shirt advertising WSPA because she called first to the station one morning when she knew the trivia answer, which happened to be avocado green shag carpet. We might need more, GR said, and then he looked out the door and said, Jesus, 2 Jesuses. Are y'all with each other? 2 young men limped up the walkway, both burdened with crosses fashioned from 4x4 lengths of pressure-treated pine normally used for flower bed edging. GR yelled out, Jesus and Jesus, y'all are the first biblical characters we've had tonight. Good job, boys. He focused on the teenagers, but handed over a couple small Butterfingers and Milky Ways to a young hobo. and Snow White, who elbowed in. They didn't say trick or treat or thank you, but he didn't mind. To the two Jesuses, he said, man, this has to be tough, for they had to hold their arms out to the side with plastic orange pumpkins strapped to their wrists, which were strapped to the wood. We're not Jesus, the kid on the left said. I'm impenitent thief. Penitent thief, sorry, said the other kid. GR looked at them. He said, say all that again, what y'all just said. He did not say, aren't y'all a little too old to be trick-or-treating? But he thought it. He also thought, it's almost 10 o'clock, and remembered seeing a news item one time about how the last visitors on Halloween often cased a house. The thief's father slid out of the shadow of the tea olive bush and said, it's what they wanted. They wanted to go out one last time. What can you do as a father? GR said, Jesus Christ. He said, I doubt I have anything y'all might want. And he stared. He said, I mean, I got candy, that's it. The father had long brown hair and a beard. And when he stood between his boys, it looked like a painting GR saw one time in a book in the emergency room's waiting area. He said, we ain't got no manna or silver. I'm allergic to peanuts, said impenitent thief. GR dumped what he had left in both boys' candy receptacles and turned off his porch light once they trudged back to the road. He didn't think at first about how he didn't see a car out there for them, and the next house stood a quarter mile away. He tried not to think about how his own son kind of looked like penitent thief. There's a break. At 10 o'clock, Tina went to bed without saying goodnight, leaving GR in the den. He turned to the early local news on the right-wing channel he watched to stay in tune with the enemy's movements. The anchor woman came on saying, some people are calling it a Halloween miracle, and went on to say she'd get to that story right after the weather forecast. The weatherman said, it's 45 degrees outside now, and I got your miracle right here, Amy. It's going to be in the mid-70s tomorrow, but rain will be moving in over the weekend with lows near freezing. Near freezing. So much for global warming. Thanks, Pete. That sounds wonderful. As you know, I was brought up in Portland, said Amy, so a little rain doesn't bother me at all. GR wished he hadn't poured out all the candy. He got up, went to the refrigerator, and thought about eating whatever Tina cooked earlier in the day that involved diced kidneys. He took out 2 cans of beer and heard Amy on the television say, and now for the Halloween miracle. Back in the den, he looked at the screen and saw Jesus and the 2 thieves. He yelled to Tina, hey, those guys were here, but she didn't respond. They was here and then they wasn't, a woman being interviewed said to a reporter. I seen them and then they vanish. Like, I don't know, I thought maybe I blunk my eyes, but Vanessa here's seen them too, and she says she didn't blunk none either. The camera swung to the woman's daughter, still in her costume. GR said out loud, vampire. I come back from my boyfriend's mama's boyfriend's party, and they was standing right there, said Vanessa, pointing to the stoop. I said, y'all ain't right, and took me a picture using my cell phone. Excuse me. She held the phone up close to the camera. Her mother said, I normally don't do Halloween, you know. Something told me this year, though, to go out to Big Lots and get me a bunch of them little Skittles packs. We had a bunch of kids show up, and then right at the end come Jesus and them 2 robbers, you know. I gave them 1 Skittles pack each, well, 2 for Jesus, and then they disappeared. We all lit up out here. Ain't no way to just take off without no one noticing. The camera turned to the reporter. He looked to GR like the kid on the Addams Family. GR couldn't tell if the guy wore a costume or not. Amy, I'm on Old Roebuck Road, and 3 other people say they had the same experience, but they didn't want to be on camera. If anyone out there witnessed Jesus and the 2 thieves, we'd like to hear about it. Back to you. GR said, I witnessed it, to himself, then louder to Tina in the bedroom. I witnessed it. Hey, I might have witnessed a Halloween miracle, honey. He drank his beer and accidentally hit last on the channel changer. A man wearing a toque looked straight at GR and said, never ever underestimate the remarkable flavors of sweetbreads. GR called the station to say he'd seen them too, but the line was busy for 5 minutes. He finished his second beer, went back to the refrigerator, extracted the rest of the six-pack, and went out to his truck. He looked at his watch and tried to remember when his last trick-or-treaters came by. 9:45, he figured. Now it was 10:20. He knew that people walked about 3 miles an hour because Tina's doctor had put her on a regimen. GR thought that anyone sporting a cross couldn't make more than 1.5 miles an hour at most. And if they stopped at houses working a late shift Halloween, it couldn't be that far. He thought, if I can find these guys and deliver them to the station, maybe I'll get on the news. What would Tina think about that? What would she think about turning on the television in the morning to see old GR standing there next to Jesus and the two thieves? He thought, maybe I can tell our story. There's a break. If y'all hear noise, I got a dog over here that's panting like crazy, sorry. Near the end of Old Roebuck Road, a quarter mile before it teed into 215, stood a useless four-way stop. On three corners stood pastures, and then there was a cement block convenience store where sheriff's deputies hung out waiting for people to ease through without holding the brakes properly. GR had his window down. He called out, Jesus, Jesus, about every 50 yards, driving 20 miles an hour, his high beams on. At first, he thought he heard the pop, pop, pop of a pistol from behind the store, but then realized the sound to be planks of lumber dropped upon one another. He sat at the four-way a good half minute longer than needed, an open can of beer between his legs, before releasing his clutch and rolling into the store's shallow parking lot, and then around back where, sure enough, Jesus and the two thieves stood around a 55-gallon drum, the crosses standing upright in it, Jesus holding a lit Zippo in one hand and some wadded newspaper in the other. GR pulled up beside them and turned off his headlights. The three men stood motionless. Y'all was on the news just now, GR said. They said anyone could find y'all, call at the station and let them know. We haven't done anything wrong, said the father. We were hungry. Candy isn't the best for a body, but it's better than nothing. The boy who introduced himself as penitent thief apologized again, but his brother said, and then we'll eat this crap, get cavities, get diabetes, and die. GR got out of his truck. He said, is the store closed? What time does this store close? I don't come down this way very often anymore. He thought, certainly they'll have cans of sardines or something inside better than candy. He thought, I don't have enough beer to share. My name's Darman. You can have your candy back if you feel like we duped you, the father said. He lit the newspaper and dropped it into the drum. His two sons stepped closer and held out their palms. GR put his beer can on the roof of his truck. He said, okay, listen, you men were at my house. I don't know if I looked away or what, but you disappeared. And then this woman came on TV and said y'all disappeared from her. People out there think you're really Jesus and the two thieves. People see what they wish to see, said Darman. GR said, yeah, I know what you mean. Without the crosses on their backs, without the porch light providing a shadow, these three look like normal unemployed construction workers. They look like hobos, grifters, Irish travelers. If they had shown up without the accoutrements, GR thought, he would point it at all three and yelled out, welder, landscaper, Shriner. It's a long story, said the father. Last year we had a roof over our heads. Now we don't. Mom does, penitent thief said. She's at the shelter, but there wasn't enough room for all of us. Impenitent thief reached into one of the plastic jack-o'-lanterns and culled out the packs of M&Ms. He said, we got to remember she likes these best tomorrow. GR reached into his truck bed and rustled out two logs he'd picked up where Duke power workers had trimmed trees that neared electrical lines. He had prided himself on not buying half cords of delivered wood for 3 years. He said, wait a minute, I could give you all this and you'd have heat for the night. Or I guess I could drive you around and show you how to find wood so you'd have heat for a lifetime, ha, ha, ha. You know what I mean? Then he dropped the tailgate and held out his right hand to help both penitent and impenitent into the back. Darman got in the passenger side after sliding the beer over. For a couple seconds, GR thought about taking them straight to the TV station. He thought about saying, don't worry, I was never a soldier. At the four-way stop, he lingered again, too long. Darman said, "You got it both ways." GR said, "This is right where our son got killed 3 years ago." There's a break. After he pulled out the push mower, riding mower, edger, leaf blower, and then the stacked rakes, shovels, posthole diggers, limb cutters, rolled up extension cords, rolled up extra garden hose, boxes of Christmas decorations, there was enough room inside his storage shed to house 3 stray men temporarily. GR manhandled a roll of hurricane fence he didn't need and a roll of barbed wire he thought he might need someday. Then he humped out a number of clay flower pots Tina said she'd one day use to plant lemon trees and ficuses. He moved bags of potting soil, pine bark mulch, playground sand, and lime. He said, "I'm embarrassed that we have all this stuff." "You have a nice house," said Darman. "What you got here, 2 acres?" GR said, 1 3/4. "Y'all can sleep here tonight, but you need to leave before my wife gets up. She just won't understand, you know. It's one of those things. Hey, who wants to eat some kidney pie?" GR went tiptoeing back inside the house, picked the casserole dish out of the refrigerator, opened a drawer for 3 forks. He placed the dish on the dining room table, got a roll of paper towels out of the closet, and listened for Tina's snoring. He said, "Tina," in a normal speaking voice. She didn't answer. The bedroom television aired nothing, which meant the remote's timer had shut it off. As he stepped out on the back porch, he heard one of the boys say, "That wouldn't be right," which made GR wonder if his father or brother had just said, "We can break in later." "I heard all that," GR said when he approached the shed, 100 steps away, in hopes of calling a bluff. "Don't get any ideas about breaking in later. I have no money hidden." Penitent thief said, "What?" "We were talking about what to do if we needed to use the bathroom. Peeing won't be a problem, but in case one of us has to go number 2, I was saying it wouldn't be right to use the wheelbarrow." "We can use one of the jack-o'-lanterns," Darman said. "And these paper towels," said GR, handing over the kidney pie. "Here, my wife said for y'all to eat this," he lied. "Well, anyway, stay warm. Put some charcoal in that hibachi and light it up, but keep the thing outside the shed. I don't want y'all to asphyxiate." Darman said, "We appreciate everything. Listen, I'm sorry about your son. I appreciate what you're doing for me and mine." GR said, "There's a pull cord for light in here. Let me go back inside and see if I can find some blankets." He started, then turned and said, "There's a smashed up car over on that side of the property. Do not sleep in it." "This kidney stuff ain't bad," said the impenitent son. He said, "Is there a hose out here? Would you mind if we drank some water?" "Right over there," said GR. "Help yourself." Little break. GR had not stood in his son's bedroom more than a half dozen times since the accident. Tina sat at the desk daily. GR couldn't. He sat outside, no matter the season, from dawn until dusk most days. Although he didn't have to return to work after the settlement, GR wouldn't have gone back anyway. He ran through images of his boy turning a double play in high school, throwing a stick to the dog, sitting down at the desk to work out algebra problems. GR knew that he would have ended up just like Jesus and the 2 thieves had the insurance company not agreed to pay $7 million for their client's negligence. $7 million didn't seem like all that much money, GR and Tina thought, but they agreed with their lawyer that they didn't want to fight longer. If Sam had lived to be 80, that would mean $100,000 per year and some change. Good money for something like a minister or a teacher. Not much for what Sam could have done in life had he indeed made the pros. GR went into his son's bedroom and stripped the mattress. Then he opened the closet and pulled out an extra folded up blanket. "Excuse me." There's a break. Tina said, "The water's running," at 5 o'clock in the morning. She nudged GR. "Did you turn on the washing machine or dishwasher?" GR didn't answer. She said, "Someone's outside running our hose." She sat up and elbowed him hard in his upper ribs. GR opened his eyes and stared at the pebbled ceiling he had wanted to scrape smooth since buying the house. He felt Tina looking at him. GR thought work, and then remembered he didn't have to show up at Kohler. He didn't need to check the kiln's temperature. He didn't need to tell anyone not to mess up. And then he remembered, "I got Jesus and his 2 thieves out back," GR thought, "from Halloween. I should have called that TV station about this. I could have gotten on there and said some things about Sam. The running water turned off. GR said it was the refrigerator. It was the freezer making ice. No, it wasn't, Tina said, throwing off the covers and getting up. I know that noise. I know every noise this house can make. I remember the ones it used to make too. She grabbed her bathrobe. GR turned on the bedroom television to drown out what sounds a thirsty thief or son of God might likely emit from the business end of a tangled hose. That same chef came on talking about the organs and glands of farm animals. By the time GR got out of bed, his wife had turned on the porch lights already and grabbed a flashlight she kept in the china cabinet. Wait a minute, GR said. Let me go out first. But she'd opened the back door and stepped out, shining a beam. It's just a homeless man and his boys, GR yelled out too loud. They're just staying for the night, honey. I felt sorry for them. Tina held the light on the three men. She said nothing, and they stood motionless, 20 feet away, all three with their hands above their heads, though the two boys held theirs out to the side. Darman said, we couldn't sleep, and we thought we'd water your plants. If you water things at dusk, they tend to get mold. What time is it anyway? Tina turned and looked at her husband. She kept the flashlight pointed toward Darman and his sons. What the hell are you doing to us? Why can't you do anything right? First Sam, and now this, and everything that's happened in between. That was a fine casserole you baked, one of the sons said. We appreciate the food you cooked, ma'am. Tina stared at her husband. She said, what? I gave them your kidney pie, GR said. They were hungry. I couldn't let them live off of Skittles and Snickers, you know. Didn't you hear me yell out to you to turn on the news and see the Halloween miracle? It was these fellas here I was talking about. Tina asked GR how much he'd had to drink and went back inside. She turned off the back porch floodlights. Darman said, we didn't mean to get you in trouble. His penitent thief son said the same. You'll have to forgive her, GR said. She doesn't know how she comes off sounding. I keep waiting for her to turn a corner. It doesn't seem to be happening. Darman said there was no need to explain. He asked if GR needed help putting the mowers back in the shed and thanked him for his kindness and said they should be walking toward the shelter anyway in order to give some candy to his wife. The penitent thief handed over folded blankets and linens and apologized for any scuff marks. GR said he'd be looking for them as the evenings got colder and reminded Darman to look for already cut firewood beneath power lines. GR returned inside and went straight to his son's room. He unfurled the sheets and blankets, then lay atop the bed. He fell asleep praying for his wife to revert back to being the gamesome woman she'd been before the accident. He pushed his head deep into his dead son's pillow and wondered what kind of willpower it would take to suffocate himself. 4 hours later, he heard the doorbell. Tina answered. Before he could get up, he knew already that a merciless and committed person stood there. If not the impenitent thief, then another. He thought about how he would finally be able to tell his family's story to anyone watching the early local news. All right, there's that story. Now what do I do? That story is in a book called Straight Decorum, and it's in this new book, You Want More. And that's about all I got to say about that. Y'all got any questions? What do we do now?
Yeah, if you're ready for the Q&A, we can dive right in. Thank you for the reading. That was, I love that. Okay, so to all of our guests, we've got more than enough time, I think, for a Q&A. If you have a question for Mr. Singleton, please just type it into the chat, and I will read what comes in aloud.
I'm going to talk a little bit about that story too, because people always say, man, he writes funny stories. He writes funny stories. I don't see a show of hands, but that ain't a funny story. I mean, there's some kind of funny lines at the beginning, but then it kind of turns. And what I'm trying to do is write a story that's funny and sad at the same time, or funny and then turns to sad. I know when I sometimes do readings, if I pull this off okay, it's kind of fun because audience members will be laughing, and then you can see on their faces, I wonder if I should have been laughing because this isn't funny anymore, it's sad. So I hope I kind of pulled that off on that one. I don't know. Never know.
What advice would you give to young or new writers?
Here's what I would do that I certainly did not do. Well, no, I kind of did do this. I didn't read like the classics until forever. I think I was 33 before I read a slew of Faulkner and Moby Dick. I kept up with contemporary fiction though, and I did okay. Although it was kind of above my head and a lot smarter than I can write, but I was in my 20s reading a lot of Thomas Pynchon and Donald Barthelme and World According to Garp by John Irving. You know, I'm not going to crack on my hometown, but the only thing I ever read in high school, they were sad. I mean, Wuthering Heights and those Charles Dickens novels and Ethan Frome. By the time I got to college, I thought if you wanted to write, you had to be just, you know, suicidal almost. So it wasn't until college where I read some funny stuff. And you know how all my buddies, who are my buddies, you'll say, you know, when did you start writing? And most will say, when I discovered Faulkner at age 6, I just knew that I was there. And I just didn't have that background. My mentor was this guy named Henry Gibson. He was on a show called Laugh-In. He came out with this big flower and said these kind of goofy poems. That was only funny stuff I could kind of remember that was writing. So for younger writers, I'd say read like all get out. It's good to know all those classics. You might be on Jeopardy one day, but if you write like Nathaniel Hawthorne, you're probably not going to get anything published. You need to read contemporary stuff. And if you're not quite sure what's contemporary, you know, go look at magazines. So go get something like Best American Short Stories, look in the back, see what magazines these are from, and then go look up those magazines, probably in your library or something. And also just write like all get out and don't worry about it.
Could you talk about any of your favorite short story writers and what you learned from them?
Boy, yeah, there's this crazy guy who's passed away now named Barry Hannah. I like his language. He doesn't know plot from a post hole, but the language is great. And I like the everydayness of Raymond Carver. And I haven't read Raymond Carver in quite a few years, but it's just regular stuff. And Flannery O'Connor kind of changed my life. I was talking to the class earlier about that because I was not, when I wrote 6 or 8 years, nothing was in the South. Well, it was in Nice, France, DC, and Memphis. And then when I was maybe 26, 27, I really read a ton of Flannery O'Connor and went, oh, this is how to write. Because I'd had professors say, you know, Bubba, you're from just a little bitty town in the South, but you're trying to write about these, you know, New York City that I'd never been to. So Flannery O'Connor is kind of a big one. Eudora Welty's another big one. And then there's, I was talking to the class today about Lewis Norden. He wrote Music of the Swamp and the All-Girls Football Team, Wolf Whistle, Sugar and the Eunuchs. Funny, he's from Mississippi. He wrote a great memoir called Boy with Loaded Gun, or Boy with Loaded Shotgun, I think. I really love Lewis Norden, who's also passed away. But, you know, my list changes about once a month, I would say. But the big ones would be O'Connor, Carver, Welty. Not, you know, people always say Chekhov, you know, kind of the grandfather of the short story. I appreciate Chekhov. I think there's some other Russian writers that are maybe got short shifted, like Gogol and Gorky. Okay, that was a good question.
All right. We've been dancing around this a little bit, but what first sparked your interest in writing short stories?
Who knows? I mean, I'm serious. I started writing. Well, you know, when I was in college, I had this French professor. I was not a French major, but he turned me on to Samuel Beckett and Eugene Ionesco and Harold Pinter. And I started reading those guys' plays. And And I started trying to write plays, and I tried to write some poems that were just god awful. And so were the play. Everything's god awful. And then I think I probably had, so I think I had a friend, I know I'd have this friend who said, you're just going to end up one of those old men who's frustrated because you never got published. And I was talking to the class today about, I have a humongous chip on my shoulder. And I mean, I should just go ahead and have tattooed, oh yeah, I'll show you. Because that's kind of how I felt. And it took me years and years and years and years and years, but it finally kind of, you know, I was talking to the class, my first book didn't come out till I was 41 or 42. I'd published a bazillion shorts, not a bazillion, a lot of short stories in good magazines, but I was being hard-headed. And when people told me to write a novel, I'd say, you know, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. And I eventually did write, you know, I wrote a novel called Novel. It's right there. That was actually just supposed to be a short story, but about page 45, I went, well, I'll just go with this. And it's kind of, don't get that book. It's terrible. But you know, I just kept going and have no clue why. A lot like when Forrest Gump started running, you remember, and he just went, Jenny, and then he just started running. I don't know why. That's how writing was with me. And a lot of people kind of compare me to Forrest Gump now that I think about it.
Are you currently working on any projects? And if so, can you tell us about what you're working on?
Yeah, you know, I'm always just writing. I've just been writing since this, even before the pandemic. I was writing these short stories, and because I make little games with myself. I want to write stories about people working in the nonprofit sector, but I've made up these crazy nonprofits, you know, like Shod America, about giving out shoes in poor Appalachian areas and other places. So I've been kind of working on those. I've written a bunch since March, about 14 or 15 stories. I mean, any of them are any good, but I've been keeping, you know, get up early in the morning, do my writing, bored out of my mind. I need to mention to y'all too that there's a good chance that this electricity is going to go off. It's pouring in Spartanburg right now. I mean, coming down hard. So I hope it doesn't. Hope we can get through this.
Okay, well, we'll hope we have you for a couple more minutes.
I've been writing the stories and sending them out, and a couple been placed, you know, but I think a lot of magazines are kind of, you know, they're not fully staffed, and it's kind of a slow go lately.
Yeah. What accomplishment are you most proud of, personal or professional?
That's a good question. I'm not real proud of anything. Wow, I just don't know. You know, when my first book, which came out of this little bitty press, came out, I remember I was really happy and proud of that. And I kind of am, well, I guess with every book that comes out. You know, believe it or not, you know, I smoked like crazy. When I was a kid, I was an okay distance runner. And I ran some good race. You know, I ran in Columbia, that Governor's Cup when I was 17, and it's a 5-mile race. And I ran that in 27 minutes, 19 seconds, which I think comes about a 4:30 mile. I was pretty proud of that. But
I'm impressed by a 4:30 mile. I'm
pretty proud of, my tomatoes came out okay this year. That was good because they haven't been. I'm pretty proud of, I rescue a lot of, Glenda and I rescue a lot of dogs. We're down to 3. One of them, Lily's over here. The last 3 are about 12 years old, but boy, we've had 2 dogs live to be 20. So that's kind of fun.
Was there any particular incident in your life that motivated you more than anything else?
This is you're probably not gonna believe this, but you know, when I was a runner and I was, I started running when I was about 13. And when I was 14, I was riding my bicycle with this guy named David Pannone, and we were on Powerhouse Road in Greenwood, and it was getting kind of close to dusk, but we had lights and whatever those things are on the back of your bike that I can't think, reflectors. And I got hit by a car. And I got hit by a car at 55 miles an hour. and I flew into the air. I landed on a I don't remember any of this. Landed on a telephone pole, slid down. I didn't break any bones, but I had a couple blood clots. I still have scars like on my elbows and knees and stuff. And then I was and I couldn't do anything for a number of months. I don't really remember the 9th grade because this happened in the summer of, I guess that would be 1972, 3, something like that. When I got back, that's kind of when I said, I'm going to run hard. I am really going to, that's kind of his, I talked to my buddy Ron Rash. Y'all know Ron. We talk about this a lot. I think that running, and when I was a kid, it got me used to just having a routine. And, I couldn't run 100 feet now, but it's that routine of getting up early in the morning and getting your work done. And I bet that I've written about that being hit by a car. I mean, I kind of made up this crazy story. It was fiction. But I think that probably, if I'd recline on a psychologist's couch, I would imagine that we would think that was something that affected me somehow.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell our audience before we sign off tonight? Oh, we've got one more question. I'm sorry. Are there any pieces of common writing advice that you think are overrated, inaccurate, or just plain wrong?
Wow. That's a good, I was trying to make it so y'all could see that poster. Maybe it's just because there's a, wow. I kind of believe in like that stuff like don't use too many adverbs. I kind of believe that because you can put the action up ahead of that. So I believe in that. Wow, that's a great question. I don't, yeah. Show, don't tell. I was talking about this in the class. Show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. English teachers and professors probably have that on their tombstone or something. There is time to tell, like, because if I'm writing a story and I say, Sally walked into the food line and bought some bread and some peanut butter and some Smucker's jelly, and on her way to the cash register, someone came in with a gun and held the place up. Later at home, Sally's best friend, Gina, said, "What did you do today, Sally?" Sally said, "I went to the food line and I bought some bread and peanut butter and some Smucker's jelly." You don't have to do that. You can just say, that's showing, but you can just say, she told Gina what she did. Because the reader already knows that. There's also this thing about sometimes you're trying to show, you say, Belinda was talking to her twin Fred, and she said, "Hey Fred, do you remember that time when we were 12 years old and Mom and Dad took us down to Myrtle Beach and we got on that big that big roller coaster and someone got sick and then the thing kept going forever and they couldn't get it to stop and it just went on and on and on, and then when we got off, Dad got mad and punched out the guy who was running the place. You remember that?" Well, of course, you don't need to do all that. That's showing, but you can just say, you can just kind of tell that when say, Belinda asked her twin brother if he remembered about the time they went to Myrtle Beach and the roller coaster went awry. You can just kind of do that without having to go through the whole thing. Because of course he remembers it unless he's, got dementia or something. So sometimes you tell instead of show. That's a good question. I'd have to think about that. I'm not smart enough to figure that one out. Don't change point of view. I tried to do that one time in a story. Boy, I got hammered by an editor on that one and said, "Don't ever do this again."
Any
Right.
parting words this evening?
No, I want to thank Anita and Heather and Ray and Elizabeth and the Dorothy B. Smith Foundation. That's really kind. I wish I were there. These things are awkward to me, and I just think, I hope our lives come back to somewhat normal while I'm still alive. That's about it.
I wish we could be together in a room too. Everyone, please join me in at least a round of virtual applause for George Singleton. George has already done a lot of my closing work for me, but just a reminder that there is a link in the chat to donate to the Fall Literary Festival. I want to say thank you to everyone who attended. Have a great night. We hope to see you next time. And George, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Oh, thank you all so much. Thank you a lot. Take care, everybody, and be safe. And vote.
Appreciate that too. All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.